Hi, sixth graders. Today we are actually going to look back at our page of notes that we took on integers. I just want to remind you what an integer is. So remember our last unit we learned about integers, the positive whole numbers, the negative whole numbers, and zero. So an integer is any negative or positive whole number and zero, and we talked about what those look like. And so today what we're actually going to take notes on is we're going to flip past absolute value and we're going to write down a new page of notes and we're going to work on adding integers. So we're actually going to be adding, now you've been adding positive numbers forever, but we're going to start throwing in negative numbers into addition. And so let's write down our title. Our title here is going to be adding integers. And today, we're actually going to take 2 pages of notes on adding integers. Today's notes are just going to be with models, or pictures, if you will. Models, pictures being the same thing. All right, so let's jump into it and let's get started. So we know an integer, which we just looked back at, are all the negative, I'm just going to put neg, and positive, POS, whole numbers. And zero, of course. All right, so we know that those are all of our negative and positive whole numbers. So now we're going to look at what would it look like. Now we're going to start really simple, and this is going to feel a little like kindergarten. But for example number 1, I want you to think about what it means to add 2 plus 5. Just think about what that means. So maybe when you were somewhere in elementary school, you used pictures to do this. And so here's what we know right now. We know that 2 is it a negative or a positive number? 2 is a positive number. What about 5? 5 is also a positive number. And you've been adding positive numbers forever, right? So I'm just going to draw a little tiny picture over here off to the side. One way you could think about this is what we would call a chip model or a circle model. And all that is that we're drawing these little tiny circles. Now sometimes they're different colors, but where we're just going to write them on paper, I'm just going to put a little plus sign in them. And this is going to represent 2 positives. See how that number right there, 2 positives can be represented just with a picture of 2 little positive. We call these chips. They're just little circles. And the next number that we would need to model is, well, we're adding this to 5. And remember, addition just means to put them together. So we have 2 little positive chips, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to add 5 more. So I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to put little plus signs on them because they're, again, positive numbers. And so hopefully this is a really long explanation that would lead you to believe that what? 2 plus 5 is 7, right? And so if I were to count the total number of chips here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I know that the answer to this problem is positive 7. Now, I told you this is going to feel a little like kindergarten, but just hang with me. Another way that we could actually add these numbers would be on a number line. And so I'm just going to draw a little tiny number line here for just a second. Now, we're dealing with positive numbers, so I'm going to put 0 over here. And I'm going to mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to label those. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 10. So one way I could model this on the number line is I could start at 0, and I could actually draw a line out to 2, or maybe even make a little bunny hop out to 2. Now, you don't necessarily need that line. We would always start at 0, but you could just start at 2, right? But I'm going from 0. My first number that I'm representing is 2, and then I'm adding 5 more. So what I could do is when I'm at 2 on the number line, I could then move because 5 is a positive number, I could move 5 more positives, and I could go 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, let's just go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, I went past it. There you go. And I would end up right there at 7, right? And so wherever my sort of arrow, let's make this an arrow, wherever my arrow ends up is going to be my answer. And so again, we know that 2 plus 5 is 7. Now, that's again sort of the kindergarten example. we're going to be looking at integers. So we're going to throw some negative numbers in here as well. So the next example, we're going to call this example number 2. Let's look and see what it looks like to add two negative numbers together. So -2 plus -5. All right. So again, we're going to use the chip model first, or the circle model. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to represent my first number first. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to draw 2 chips. But now, instead of putting positives in them, because this 2 was a positive, this 2 is what kind of a number? It's a negative number. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw little negative signs inside of my circles. All right, so I've got 2. Now I'm going to model my next number, which is 5, -5. And so I'm going to draw 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But of course it's -5. And so instead of putting positives, I'm again going to put negatives. We're going to put negative symbols inside of the circles if the number is negative. We're going to put positive symbols if it's positive. All right. And so again, just like we did up here, all we're going to do is we're going to count these, add them together, and we're going to see what sign do we end up with. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's still 7 here, but it's no longer +7 because all of these are negative. So my answer here is -7. So -2 plus -5 is -7. Addition of negative numbers works exactly like positive numbers, only the answer is going to be negative. Now I could show this on the number line as well. So just draw a little tiny number line below there. Now because I'm dealing in negative land, I'm actually going to put 0 over here so that I'll have room for my negatives. So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. We'll go out to -8. See if you can fit -8 on there. All right. And so on the number line, again, we always start at 0. And so we're going to look at modeling our first number. So our first number was -2. So we're going to go from 0 over to -2. And sometimes these will be drawn as like curves. Sometimes they'll be drawn as straight lines. It just depends on who's drawing the model. Sometimes you won't even have a line from 0 to -2. It'll just start at -2. But then we're going to add 5 more negatives, which does not mean that we're going to go to -5, right? We're adding on 5 negatives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be at -2, and I'm going to move 5 in the negative direction. Remember, negative is this way, positive is this way. So because I'm moving 5 more negatives, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to end up at -7. I'm going to draw my little arrow there, and then I'll make my little hop. So notice again, here I'm modeling, go to -2, and then go 5 more in the negative direction, which ends up, again, the arrow is where the final answer is going to be. Here it was +7, here it's going to be -7. All right, so I want you to try one of these in example number 3. And then we're going to look at what happens when you add a negative and a positive number together. So go ahead and try this. See if you can model it with the chips and the number line, and then we'll go over it together. Let's do -3 plus -2. All right, go ahead and try that. Maybe pause the video. All right, I hope you paused the video and tried this problem out. And so let's look and see what this would look like. So I'm going to model the first number first. This is 3 negatives. So I'm going to draw 3 circles, negatives in them. I'm going to draw the next, I'm going to model the next number, which is 2 negatives. And then I'm going to count them. 3 plus 2 is 5, but all of them are negative. So my final answer is going to be -5. On the number line, we would do the same thing. Draw the number line. We're going to mark 0. And then we're going to mark -1, oops, what did I write a 2? -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. I'm going to go from 0. I'm going to mark -3 first. That's my first number that I'm going to model. And then I'm not going to go back to -2, but I'm going to move 2 more spaces in the negative direction. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and I end up at -5. Remember, the last arrow is where the answer is going to be. And so either way, I get the final answer of -5. All right, so adding negative numbers is not too bad. Now let's look and see what happens when we have a negative and a positive value. So let's look at example number 4. And we are going to add positive. We're going to add +2 plus -5. So we've been dealing with 2 and 5 anyway. We might as well keep it up. All right, so let's see what this is going to look like. Now, 2 is positive, and so I'm going to go ahead and draw. I'm going to model my first number. I'm going to draw 2. I'm going to put positive values in them. All right, that is a positive 2. Then I'm going to model my second number. There are 5 negatives, and so I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are all negative. You've got to pay careful attention to what kind of number it is. 2 positives first, then 5 negatives. Count them carefully and make sure you have the correct sign inside. All right, now, if we tried at this point to just add these together, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We would have 7 total again, right? But is it going to be positive 7 or negative 7? Because I've got a mixture of signs here. I don't know whether it's positive or negative. So what I cannot do is I cannot just add these simply together. All right, now let me ask you this. 1 positive and 1 negative. Let's think about that for just a second. So I'm going to go over here off to the side. I'm going to draw a little box right off to the side of this example. And I'm going to show you something that is going to be very, very, very important for you to understand. When you see a positive chip and a negative chip together, 1 positive and 1 negative, think of this as like having $1 and then somebody taking $1 away from you. Or maybe even taking 1 step forward and 1 step back. What does it mean to have 1 positive and 1 negative? That is actually 0. 1 positive and 1 negative makes 0. And I'm going to make a big note here. If you see a positive and a negative together, that actually goes to 0. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to mark them out. If you see a positive and a negative together, that is 0. Again, it's like gaining $1 and then losing $1. Well, you had no money to begin with. You found $1 on the sidewalk and then you lost it again. Right? That means you have no money. 1 positive and 1 negative makes 0. And so what we're going to do over here is because we see a positive matched up with a negative, I'm just going to mark through those. That becomes 0. Another positive and another negative, that becomes 0. So we match up negatives and positive. We actually call these 0 pairs. They end up being pairs that equal 0. So we're going to mark them out, and then we're going to look at what we have left once we've marked out all of our positive and negative pairs, matches. The answer to this problem is -3. So 2 plus -5 is -3. Again, think about this in terms of money, and it might make a little more sense. If you have $2 in your bank, but then you go and you spend $5, well, you only had $2 in the bank and you went and spent $5. Now you're $3 in debt because you spent the 2 that you had plus 3 more that you didn't have, right? Now, on the number line, this might make a little more sense. So here's how we would see this on the number line. So I'm going to mark 0. I'm going to put it in the middle because I have a positive and a negative here. I need to see 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go ahead and go out to 5, even though we probably won't need it that far. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -1, -2, -3, -4. We'll go out to -4. -5 will be this last one here. All right, and so the problem was 2 plus -5. So again, I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to go to my first number. I'm going to mark it. So I'm going to go from 0 to 2. And now that I'm at 2, I'm going to add on 5 negatives. Well, remember, positive numbers go this way, negative numbers go this way. I'm here standing at 2. I walk 2 steps forward. This is telling me to go backwards 5 steps. And so if I'm at 2, I'm going to go backwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to end up at -3. Almost like 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. Again, the answer here is -3. -3. All right, so this part with the chips, it's very important that you remember if you see a positive and a negative, you mark them out. They're gone. On the number line, it's important to remember positive numbers go to the right, negative numbers go to the left. Let's look at another example like this and see if we can make a little more sense of this. So let's look at example number 5. And let's try some different numbers. So let's try +6 plus -4. All right, so let's think about what that would look like with the circles. With the circles, I'm going to model you're always going to draw that first number first. So I'm going to draw 6 circles. 4, 5, 6. What sign am I going to put in them? What kind of a 6 is that? That's a +6. So we're going to put positive signs in all of these chips. 6 positives. All right, then I'm going to draw my second number. How many circles do I need? I need 4. What sign am I going to put inside of them? All of these are going to be negative. All right, and so now that we have to ask ourselves, do we just count all of these and combine them together? Or are they different signs and do I need to mark stuff out? Well, we've got some positives, we've got some negatives, and we know that when we see positives and negatives, there's going to be some stuff that gets marked out to 0. So 1 positive, 1 negative becomes 0. 1 step forward, 1 step back. 1 step forward, 1 step back. Positive, negative, mark it out. Positive, negative, mark it out. And once everything's gotten marked out, you look and see what you have left. What do you have left? The answer here is 2. Is it positive or negative? These chips are positive, and so my answer is positive 2. Again, on the number line, and we're always going to look, and here on your practice after these notes is going to ask you to draw the chips, and it's actually going to ask you to draw the number line. So it is important that you write these number lines down so that you have them. All right, so let's mark 0. We need to go out to 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm going to mark -1, -2, -3. I don't think we'll even need to go that far, right? Because we're going to start at 0. The problem is 6 plus -4. So the first number I'm going to draw an arrow to is 6. So I'm going to walk 6 steps. It's like, remember that little ant on the number line back to your absolute value? It's almost like you're the ant. Go to 6. Then we're adding on 4 negatives. Well, again, positive numbers go this way, so we went to positive 6. Negative numbers go back this way. But now remember, I'm standing at 6. I'm not down here at -4. I'm at 6. So what this number means is that I'm going to walk backwards 4 steps from where I'm at. 1, 2, 3, 4. And where do I end up? Where does that final arrow end up? At 2, which is exactly what we got with the chips. All right. Now, I also want you to notice one thing. Notice when we did this example number 4, notice that you ended up having more negatives, like you had 2 and then 5, right? And so you ended up having more negative chips because 5 just is more. And the answer ended up being negative. Now here, we had 6 positives and 4 negatives, and so we had more positives, and we ended up with a positive answer. So actually, before you even start the problem, you should be able to kind of look and say, okay, do I have more positives or negatives? If you have more negatives, your answer is going to be negative. If you have more positives, your answer is going to be positive. So I'm going to give you 2 more problems that you can work on your own. So this is example number 6, and I'm going to skip 3 lines, and example number 7 to try on your own. You can pause the video once I write these down, check yourself, and then on your practice for today, you are going to practice modeling with chips, with the circles, and you're going to practice drawing out the path of traveling positives and negatives on the number line. So the problems I want you to work are 4 plus -7, and then I want you to work negative, let's see, what did I have written down here? Let's do negative, trying to think of a number I haven't used yet. Let's do -6 plus 3. All right, pause the video, go ahead and try those with the chips and the number line, and then come back and restart the video to check. All right, I hope you took time to practice these and try them on your own. So I'm just going to go through the answers very quickly. You should have 4. Zoom in a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're positive. Then you should have 7 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All negatives. Ask yourself, do I combine these or do I mark out? Well, we've got positives and negatives. So positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. Final answer, there's 3 left, and they're all negative. So answer is -3. On the number line, you should think about starting at 0 and then walking out to +4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you take steps to 4 positives, first number, and then you're going to back up 7. So I'm going to need some negatives here. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And your final arrow should end up at -3. For the last problem with the chips, you should have 6 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you should have 3 positives. Again, ask yourself, do I need to mark out or do I need to just add them up? And in this case, we're marking them out again. Negative, positive, negative, positive. Oh, look, I gave you 2 problems that came out to be exactly the same answer. Don't worry, the answer is not always -3, but in this case, it does end up being -3 again. And notice we had more negatives in both of these problems than positives, right? So -3, and on the number line, that means our final arrow should also be at -3. So we'll mark 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we should end up down here at -6 is our first jump with the arrow, and then you're going to move in the positive direction 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. And we do end up again at -3. And this is how you add and subtract negative positive numbers. Now, again, on the practice, you're going to be doing both of these things. Please, now that we have done a bunch of negatives and positives, don't get confused about when you have just a bunch of negatives or a bunch of positives. Did we do any marking out in these first 3 examples? No, because we had the same sign. So do not start marking out negatives and negatives, or do not mark out positives and positives. We're only marking out when we have positives and negatives together. Good luck on your practice, and email me if you need a question.